Chapter 6, Step 3, Property Analysis, How to Find the Magic Number. So far, you've completed 2 out of 5 steps. In Step 1, you created, or purchased, a list of properties scheduled to be sold at auction, and then filtered that list to meet your most basic requirements for things like price, age, and location. In Step 2, you drove by, or had someone else drive by, each house to gather more information. As with the previous step, you then filtered your list further, excluding properties based on new factors like occupancy and the condition of the house. You should now have a much shorter list of properties. Every house on that list should share one common element. You'd love to buy it at auction, if the price is right. But what is the right price? We still know very little about these homes financially. When you're standing on the courthouse steps on auction day, how will you know how much to bid? Bid too much, and you run the risk of losing money. Cap your bid too low, and you might not buy anything at all. Neither is an outcome you can sustain for long in the foreclosure business. The solution is to find a property's magic number, the maximum you'd be willing to bid at auction that still allows room for your desired profit. By the end of this chapter, that's what you'll be able to do. For any potential listing, you'll be ready to distill everything you know about the property down to one all-important number, the highest amount you're willing to pay. Property analysis, the big picture. In the broadest sense, you need to know only 2 things to figure out your maximum bid: how much you can sell the property for once you've fixed it up, and how much all that fixing is going to cost. When you subtract the second from the first, you get your maximum bid. Resale price minus cost equals maximum bid. Of course, that's a simplified equation. The resale price might be just one number, but there are many costs on the road to resale, such as realtor commissions. You'll pay a realtor a percentage of the selling price. Construction costs. These may include money spent on demolition, cleaning, painting, flooring, HVAC repairs, lawn care, and more. Past due taxes. Any back taxes will have to be paid to the county. Occupancy costs. Evicting a tenant or finding a new one carries a price tag. Closing costs. You'll incur legal and other expenses to finalize the deal. Liens. Liens are costs recorded against the property that were incurred by prior owners. Many liens will go away after foreclosure, but some will need to be paid off. Different types of liens include mechanics liens, federal tax liens, and city utility liens. A lien could also be a warning of a lawsuit, which will cost to remedy. Miscellaneous overhead. This includes expenditures leading up to the auction, such as fees for drivers and title companies, plus various expenses related to property ownership, insurance, security, banking, and more. And let's not forget one more magic piece of the puzzle: desired profit. After all this, you want to make sure you get paid too. Most investors want to make a 10 to 20% return on their upfront investment. We'll add that to our equation as well. Otherwise, your max bid will be just enough to pay everyone else except you. It's time, then, to expand our original equation to include more specifics on the cost side. Here it is again in more detail. Resale price minus realtor commissions, construction costs, past due taxes, liens, occupancy costs, closing costs, miscellaneous overhead, and desired profit equal max bid. We now have what we call our bid calculator. Once you fill in all the blanks, you'll know the maximum amount you should bid at auction to both cover your costs and make a tidy return on the property. Note: you can download a spreadsheet version of this bid calculator at biggerpockets.com/foreclosure bonus. The rest of this chapter is a step-by-step breakdown of how to come up with these numbers. To keep things simple, we're going to split the chapter into two parts. Part A will look at how to estimate the resale price, the first number, while Part B will examine how to calculate the various costs of getting the property ready for resale, all the other numbers. A. Resale price. Our starting point is the top line number in our previous calculation, the resale price. That's the amount you believe you can sell the house for after you've taken possession and done any necessary work. In other words, when everything's been completed, from repainting the walls to replacing the light fixtures and paying the people who help, how much will the house sell for on the open market? The answer, as any real estate professional knows, is it depends. It depends on the location. It depends on the house's amenities. It depends on the market and the economy. It depends on the surrounding properties. The value of any house depends on a lot. This can be a challenge even for seasoned real estate professionals. Fortunately, a system has gradually been developed to tease out what an individual home is worth. Fundamentally, that system is about market value, and its premise is this. If other houses have sold in the neighborhood recently, and those houses are similar to the one in question, then the house in question will probably sell for a similar amount, all other things being equal. These similar houses are called comparables, or comps for short, and they represent the key to coming up with a number for the resale value of the house you're considering. If you can find evidence of other houses that have sold that are similar, you can use those numbers to help find your number. Now that you've narrowed down your spreadsheet of possible properties to just those that fit your goals, you can go through the following steps with each one. 1. Take a bird's eye view. Your first step is to get a big picture view of the house in question. The best tool for this job is Google Maps, which will allow you to see the property you're interested in, plus the surrounding area. Make sure to check not just the map view, but also the satellite view, which lets you see actual images of the area. The question you're trying to answer at this point is, how typical is the house I'm looking at? To do that, consider the following factors. Front and rear exposure. Does it back onto a forest, a lake, other yards, power lines? Does it face a typical residential street or a busy main thoroughway? Relative size. Is it significantly larger or smaller than average? Lot size. Is the lot similar in size and shape to the nearby lots? Amenities. Is your house the only one with a pool? The only one without? Is it the only one with a garage? Neighboring properties. Does your house have atypical neighbors, such as commercial spaces, industrial units, or empty lots? Note any of these differences on your spreadsheet. Remember that every house is different. That's why this is a bird's eye view. You don't want to get lost in the weeds by, say, examining which house has the most trees in the front yard. Focus on the big picture. Note: if the property you're considering seems significantly different from those on the surrounding area, see the Help section later in this chapter. 2. Look for sales history and comparable properties. Once you've established that your house is similar to the others around it, it's time to start looking for your comps, houses that have sold recently and are similar to the one you're interested in. For that, you're going to make use of one or more of the real estate data sites such as Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com, the same sites you used in the latter stages of list building in step 1. Choosing which site to use as your preferred source will most likely depend on what county you're living in. You'll have to experiment to find the one with the best sales data for your area. It's worth noting that a licensed real estate professional will usually have access to more data than the aggregator sites. If you are a realtor, or you know one who can help, you'll have an advantage. This also holds true if your county's sales data isn't public or you live outside the United States. To get started, simply search for the address of the home on your preferred site. The results should look familiar since you did the same thing in step 1. This time, however, you're going to be doing two things differently. First, you'll be digging deeper into the history on this particular home to look for sales, listings, or any other recent activity. Second, you'll be looking at other houses that you might be able to use as comps. Data for your property. Scan the listings for your property and look first for any relevant listings or sales activity. Note the dates. What we're hoping for at this stage is to get lucky and find recent sales activity that would help us close in on a resale value. For example, a listing followed by a quick sale is an indication that the price was close to or perhaps below market value. Conversely, a listing that has languished with no sales activity or with repeated price drops may indicate that the price is above market value. For example, if your house was listed for $175,000 and sat on the market for 6 months, that price probably did not reflect the home's market value. After all, market value is what the market is willing to pay. In this case, the market wasn't willing to pay $175,000. Next, while you're looking at the sales history for this particular property, make sure you've noted key factors like square footage, age, number of bedrooms, and number of baths. Add anything new to your spreadsheet. You're going to use that info as your base criteria for finding comparable properties in the local market. Data for comparable properties. Remember the valuation principle? If you can find similar properties that have sold, you can use those to estimate the value of your subject property, the one you're interested in at auction. Your chosen real estate site will usually do a good job of showing you properties for sale in the neighborhood. A great comp meets 3 criteria. It's close to your subject property. It's similar to your subject property in size, age, features, rooms, and finishes. It's sold in the past 90 days. To get a good idea of value, you want to find at least 3 comps. That won't always be easy, but that's your goal. More is better. When you find a comparable property, add it to the spreadsheet that captures the following: address, selling price, square footage, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, any additional comments, for example, high quality finishes, or backs onto a highway. I usually start a new spreadsheet, add the subject property to the top, and then add the comps above it. If you find 3 or more sales in the past 3 months that are close by and very similar to the property you're interested in, congratulations! Take the average of their selling prices, and you've got yourself a reasonable estimate as to what your place will sell for. Enter it in the top line of your bid sheet as the resale value. The tricky part is that finding 3 identical properties nearby that have sold isn't always easy. Houses are rarely identical. Even in cookie-cutter communities, houses that have identical floor plans and look exactly the same from the outside will have different cabinets, appliances, flooring, and fixtures on the inside. The most realistic situation you're going to face then is that you find several potential comps, but they're all a little different from your subject property. One might be bigger than yours. Another could be a lot nicer inside. The third one might be 10 years older. In the example above, we're comparing apples to apples. Now you've got a trickier situation involving mixed fruit. What do? Try to make your comps, on paper, look just like yours. You turn the oranges and grapefruit into apples. It's a process we call making adjustments. 3. Adjust your comparables. Even though your list of comparables may not be very, comparable, it's still the best information you have to build your guess about the value of the subject property. To use those comparables, however, you'll have to adjust them so that they more closely resemble the property you're trying to value. For example, a nearby sale, let's call it property A, is 1,800 square feet, but yours is 1,500. How much should you adjust the sales price of property A to make it closer to yours? Another nearby sale, property B, has much nicer finishes inside. How much should you adjust the sales price to make it a better match for yours? Property C has 3 bedrooms, while yours has 2. How should you adjust the sales price? Adjustments are tricky. They're as much art as science, and the single biggest factor in becoming good at them is simply experience. Specifically, the experience that comes from looking at a lot of sold real estate. That's why when you speak with a realtor, they'll be able to say, "Oh, that one sold for $300,000, but it had the nice cabinets and the bonus room over the garage. Yours will likely sell for $265,000. It's not magic. They just have enough market experience to be better at guessing. And that's the lesson. Everyone is guessing. You're just trying to become a good guesser, which takes practice. Lesson: estimating value is an educated guessing game, and the best guessers are the people who see the most sales data. The more often you can look at sales in your auction area, the better you'll become. Still, we can make an attempt to standardize some adjustments. It's not perfect, and there are many ways in which these adjustments can be wrong, but you might find them helpful at the start. Some common changes to a property to adjust value. This would work for an average price point of around $150,000 to $250,000. Adjustments would be smaller for less expensive homes and larger for more expensive homes. Backs onto busy road. Subtract $5,000 per lane. Private cul-de-sac. Add $10,000 to $15,000. Recently painted and updated. Add $5 per square foot. Badly in need of paint and updating. Common for bank-listed foreclosures. Subtract $5 per square foot. Swimming pool. Add $10,000 to $30,000. High-end finishes. Granite, stainless steel, new cabinets. Add $5 per square foot. Large yard. Add $5,000 to $20,000. Single story. Add $10,000. Gated community. Add $10,000 if comps are outside gate. Another way to approach adjustments is to find 2 comps that are fairly similar to each other, except for one attribute. For example, 2 nearly identical homes have sold in the past 3 months. The only meaningful difference is that one has an extra bedroom. In this case, the difference in the selling price gives us an excellent idea as to the value of one bedroom. Now, you can use that per bedroom value to adjust other comps. If a comp has one bedroom more than your house, you'll have to subtract that bedroom value from the comp to make it more like your subject property. Likewise, if a comp has one bedroom less than yours, you'll have to add that value to the comp to make it more like the one you're interested in. Do this for all your comps, making adjustments for size, bedrooms, baths, etc. Once you're satisfied that you've equalized your comps with your subject property, you can average their values for a good estimate of what yours might sell for. The dangers of square foot pricing. One of the challenges you'll discover early on when looking for comparables is that houses that have sold nearby are rarely the same size. From the street, some communities really do seem to be cookie-cutter similar, but that's less common than it appears. While some developments consist only of houses that follow the same footprint and layout, it's more likely that your comps will be similar in many ways, but different in square footage. For example, when trying to come up with a price for 256 Voss Street, a 2,327 square foot home, I see a sold house on the same street just a few doors down. The house at 113 Voss Street sold for $218,000 and is 1,467 square feet. At this point, the first thing that comes to my mind is, if only these were the same size, I'd have the perfect comp. The second thing will be, hey, why don't I figure out the price per square foot? Then I can calculate the value of any house. So you grab a house from the middle of the pile and do the math. Let's see, $218,000 for 1,467 square feet. That's $149 per square foot. I'm a genius. You wouldn't be alone in thinking this. Many a real estate professional has done the same thing, but like them, you'd be mistaken. A 1,467 square foot house that recently sold for $218,000 is indeed worth $149 per square foot, but it's a mistake to use that $149 multiplier to estimate the value of a larger or smaller house. Why? Because the price per square foot doesn't rise in lockstep with the increase in size. For example, if a 1,400 square foot house is worth $149 per square foot, a larger house is not priced proportionately. A property that's 2,300 square feet might actually be worth $125 per square foot, not $149. So you can't use a standard square foot multiplier to figure out value, but there is a point at which it can be helpful. If, after adjusting for other things like finishes and location and condition, you come up with a value, you can check that value against a square footage graph as a way to double-check your results. Let's say that your subject property is 1,800 square feet. You don't have a comp that's the same size, but you do have a range of comps, and you can add them to a graph with square feet on one axis and property price on the other. If you've come up with a value for your subject property, you can plot it on the graph and then simply eyeball it. Does it fit on the imaginary line connecting the other properties? Is it close? This is a rough tool, but if your valuation is way off, it gives you a reason to double-check your work. B. Costs. In Part A, you found the estimated resale value of a home, which is the top line in our bid calculator. That's the amount we expect to receive on a sale. From that, we need to subtract all the other line items. Consistent line items. Several of these items are consistent from property to property or relatively easy to find. Let's tackle them first. Realtor commissions. Your agent will take 3 to 4% of the selling price. Multiply your resale price by 0.04 and enter the amount. Past due taxes. You should already have them on file from your title search. Enter the amount. Occupancy costs. Occupied houses tend to have higher costs associated with them. We like to allow an extra 5% for occupancy costs, such as legal fees or cash for keys. More on this later. Added in. Closing costs. We generally use 2% of the resale price, assuming 90 days worth of taxes plus title and insurance costs. Add it to your bid sheet. Desired profit. Most investors want a 10 to 20% return. Again, multiply the resale price by the profit, 0.1 to 0.2, and enter the value in the bid sheet. That leaves two items that are a little less cut and dry. Miscellaneous overhead. There are always costs you don't see coming. Most are small, but they can add up. Staff overhead is particularly important to track. If you're paying for drive-bys, title checks, or broker price opinions, your costs are going to be higher. The trick here is that the overhead applies to all the houses you look at, not just the one you buy. If you pay someone to drive by 40 houses in order to buy one at auction, that cost needs to be absorbed by the house you buy. But if you apply the 40 house cost of everything to all the bids, you're going to have max bids that are unreasonably high. There's no clear answer here. If you do everything yourself and you buy one home per year at auction, then your overhead may be just your time and the cost of your car, which you'd enter on the bid sheet. If, however, you're using other services and buying several houses, you'll need to think through the math more carefully. The point is, there are a number of costs that are not covered in the other lines on the bid sheet. Track everything you spend, and then allocate it here in a way that fits your approach. Construction costs. Like resale value, construction costs vary from house to house and can be complicated to estimate. Here are some very rough estimates of the costs of various renovation line items. If you have renovation experience or know a contractor, that will help. If not, the following will give you a place to start. Secure house and rekey, $250 to $300. Trash out interior and exterior, $0 to $3,000. Power wash, $250. Landscape cleanup, $250 to $3,000. Exterior detailing, $200 to thousands of dollars, depending on dry rot repairs, light fixtures, siding, stucco, etc. Exterior paint, $1 to $2 per square foot. Interior paint prep, $0 to $500. Interior paint, $1 to $3 per square foot. Interior detailing, $500 to $1,000. Window replacement, $400 per window. Flooring installation, $1 to $3 per square foot. Appliance order and installation, $1,000 per set for base level, but can become tens of thousands of dollars for higher-end models. Average base level is $500 for range, $350 for dishwasher, and $250 for microwave hood combo. HVAC service, $250 to $3,000. Deep cleaning, $250 to $500. Carpet cleaning, $250 to $700. One of the most convenient rules of thumb I know for estimating renovation costs is to assume that the cost of materials is roughly equal to the cost of labor to install and use them. This is an extremely liberating rule. It means you can go to your local building supply store, add up the cost of the materials to do a job, no skill required, and use that as an estimate of the labor costs. For example, if a ceiling fan costs $150 to buy, you can assume the cost of installation might be similar, $150. Total cost, $300. Like our other shortcuts, this is not 100% accurate, but it served me well over the years and will give you a starting point until you have the experience to make more educated guesses. The danger of magnifying costs. As you start going through the costing exercise, you'll notice two things. First, There's often a range, a low end and a high end. Second, you might be tempted to always use the high number just to be safe. The problem with this approach is that you end up with a sky-high total for your construction costs, and one that probably isn't realistic in most cases. A better solution is to use a spreadsheet with two cost columns, one for the low end and one for the high. Add each column to get a total estimate for both low and high end, then average the two and get a more reasonable number. Back to the bid sheet. You should now have a line item for every blank on the bid sheet. Once you do the final math, you're left with one magic number, your maximum bid on auction day. That number, as you'll see in future chapters, is your big red stop sign. It's the most you're willing to pay for the house. Example bid sheet for 121 Main Street. Resale price equals $125,000. Realtor commission, or 3 to 6% of resale, equals $5,000. Estimated construction equals $15,000. Past due property taxes, from county website, equals $1,250. Closing costs, or 2% of resale price, equal $2,500. Desired profit, or 10 to 20% of investment, equals $10,000. Therefore, the max bid, or resale price minus all expenses minus desired profit, equals $91,250. Help! Some houses are easy to analyze. They're in cookie-cutter communities with lots of recent sales. In those cases, one house is often much like another, and there are plenty of comparables. You might make some small adjustments for square footage or interior finishes, but the job of coming up with the resale value number is fairly simple. Other houses are much trickier. You might find there are no comps or that the houses vary widely. It's difficult to find apples to compare to apples. What should you do when the adjustments are too hard to make and you feel like you're truly just taking a stab in the dark at the valuation? You have a few options. 1. Professional appraisals. There are, of course, people who specialize in assessing resale value. They're called appraisers, and they're usually trained and certified for exactly what you're struggling to learn. The upside is that they're fast, accurate, and have a ton of market experience. The downside is that you have to pay for each appraisal, generally from a few $100 to more than $1,000, depending on the area. As with many costs in this process, that may not seem like much for a single property, but if you have to do a dozen professional appraisals in order to bid on one house, the costs add up. 2. Online data aggregators. Another option is to use the valuations from some of the real estate property sites. If Zillow's price estimate is X, for example, while Redfin's is Y, you could average them or pick the one that seems more accurate or conservative. In our experience, this can work, but you can't always rely on the number you get. Sites like Zillow and Redfin are limited by the same things you are. If there are no comps, there are no comps. It's hard to put a market value on something when there's no market. 3. Broker price opinions. A third option is to work with a real estate professional. Most experienced brokers and agents have looked at thousands of comps and put resale value estimates on hundreds of homes. They know the market, and some will have decades of experience watching it. A great agent with local experience can tell you in seconds what a house will sell for. We call these broker price opinions, and they represent a middle ground between the previous two options. The valuation may be more accurate and informed than what you'd find online yourself, but it won't be free, at least not for long or in volume. Typically, an agent won't do this repeatedly out of the goodness of their heart. Some brokerages have a standard fee for this. Other times, you'll need to find some way to reward an agent who agrees to help. For example, offer to give them the listing if you're successful at auction. Partner with them. You're the foreclosure and auction expert, they're the real estate brain. Pay them a per value estimate. You may be able to arrange a fee for service arrangement with an agent to help with valuations. Much of the above also applies to calculating construction costs. Some houses are easier than others. When we bought a fire-damaged house at auction, we had to do some extra legwork to figure out how much it was going to cost to remove the smell of smoke and assess any structural damage. It was daunting, to say the least. Fortunately, we had lots of construction experience, but if we didn't, we'd likely have worked with local contractors to help us figure out some of the numbers in exchange for the likelihood of doing the work if we were successful at auction. The art of analysis. Still, for all the tips, analyzing a property can seem like an impossibly complicated task. How do you find information from the disparate worlds of demographics, construction, real estate, and finance? And how do you combine them to come up with a valuation you can use to go to auction? If it feels overwhelming, consider this. Help is out there. You can use a realtor. You can subscribe to services like Padhawk that help with data. You can speak to contractors. Revisit Chapter 3 on assembling your team. You will surprise yourself. Time and your brain tend to do amazing things. You may be overwhelmed on your first visit to Realtor.com or in your first attempts to figure out the cost to renovate a home. But with every attempt you make, with every property you try to analyze, you're gradually building experience. You don't have to go to auction tomorrow. No one is forcing you to buy something at the next auction. Take your time. Allow yourself to build knowledge, connections, and experience. And when you're ready, go for it. Remember that over time, you are going to become a minor expert in all these things. You won't always need someone else's help. For example, you might start with an agent and then realize that you don't need them, or that you need them only for atypical or tricky properties. You might need a contractor to help you work through costing on a couple of places, and then realize you know enough to do it on your own. As with all things foreclosure related, you're going to learn more than you think, faster than you think.